All right.
Oh man, I'm in Seattle and I'm here with my man Robbert.
Hubbard. Really nice to get a chance to sit down with you a little bit and just hang out.
You see my haircut, man. I went to one of the local barber shops. Robbert referred his barber to me last minute. I went and got my haircut, man. I'm excited to be in Seattle with you. You know, I feel so embraced by you brothers, man. Y'all have just open arms, supported me in creating this story, and you know, we getting to sit down. And how you feeling?
Support is what we do.
How you feeling, brother?
I'm feeling well. You know, it's a good, nice afternoon. We have beautiful weather in Seattle. Let's pause for a minute and reflect on having the sun out in Seattle, Washington. Yes, it's freezing out there, but it's actually beautiful. That's amazing.
No, man, it's cold for us from Florida and Atlanta. You know, it's freezing for us, but I'm loving Seattle, man. You're originally from Georgia.
Yep.
You know, what part?
So I'm originally from Albany, Georgia. Spent most of my young life there. Grew up in Albany. My parents are still there. My sister's still there with the rest of the family. Actually, my mother was the mayor for many years. She actually lost the election right before COVID. And one of the things that we said was it was a blessing for her because it meant that she didn't have to be in public. She was able to be at home and stay safe as COVID started this year, or last year, I guess it is. Wow, it's already been that long with COVID. But it's really been nice that, she's been able to be safe and protected, and the same for my dad. So they actually recently both got the vaccine, so I'm very happy, very excited that is happening and rolling out. I'm looking forward to getting my own vaccine as well, and so happy that progress is being made, and hopefully we'll be able to stop doing this soon. Chief.
Yeah, we're keeping it safe. So I want you to, for people who, don't know you, if you can give us a nice little bio, a quick rundown of your resume, man. You sent me your resume and it was just like.
Well, let's start with the important thing because I have to make sure I don't get in trouble. I am a husband of 20 years. My wife Samira and I live here in the Seattle area, and we have our two boys, Robbert III and John, who are 9 and 7. And so that is number one and top priority. Yes. From there, it is, I have been blessed to have the opportunity to have a career that has allowed me to work in 3 different wonderful businesses. I worked for Procter & Gamble for almost 18 years. Started in manufacturing, was able to move into finance after my undergraduate experiences at Albany State University and Georgia Tech. Really enjoyed manufacturing as a way to really get into business, to understand how things worked, and then moved over into finance after finishing my MBA at Washington University in St. Louis. Spent then many years in finance working both in operations and later in sales finance, focusing on how do we help salespeople have the tools that they need to run the business, have the right analysis to make great decisions, and really that has become my focus from there moving forward. So from there into Amazon, where again it was how do I make sure we have great data for great analysis, working initially in retail and later in advertising finance. And most recently, I've been working for most of the last year at St. Michel Wine Estates, where I'm the senior manager for finance related to sales, again, supporting the sales organization and pricing to make sure that we actually, again, make great decisions. And so trying to figure out how do we help that organization move forward in a way that ultimately grows our wine business and allows people to have a wonderful experience with our wine brands.
So it's so much inspiration for me because this part of what I'm doing is Black men in tech, and your foundation, I want to talk to you about your foundation in education. Like I think it all started there because I want to take a look back to know why you're here today. Let's talk about that foundation in just, in your younger years. Who was the influencers, and then how did you get to Albany State, and then why Georgia Tech?
Sure. I think that starts with my parents. My mother was an Albany State graduate, and so as a little boy, she would take me on campus. She worked there, and so her position as I went into school age was you can do whatever you want, but my money goes to Albany State. So she was very clear that I would be an Albany State grad. My sister is the same. And so that support for historically Black colleges is an important part of our personal and family culture. And from there it was, where can I also learn some new and different things? And so Georgia Tech was really a natural outgrowth of that. So as I was a young person, I was blessed to have regular interactions with Albany State to learn what an HBCU could do for me. And then later was blessed with the opportunity to realize that, Georgia Tech really was a national institution that had name recognition that would allow me to open doors and go places that I wanted to go. So it really helped make sure that people understood that I had a great background and experience, and allowed me to be able to have impact and get opportunity. So I think the two together were really important for me.
So what was the studies at Albany State, and then what was the transition studies at Georgia Tech? Like, what was?
Yeah, so for me it was, I always loved math and science as a kid. I loved, putting things together. And so, one story that my parents will tell is my dad came home one night and I had the VCR apart and it was laid out all over the floor. And so later when I went to engineering school, he was like, I'm glad that my patience with you and letting you take things apart and in some cases even put them back together. That VCR, by the way, did work later. That ultimately that what allowed you to go where you want to go. So my, education experience then later became chemistry at Albany State, and so it was an opportunity to understand how molecules interact and start to develop kind of a systematic way of thinking. And so then at Georgia Tech, it was chemical engineering, which takes that systematic way of thinking to a different level, from thinking about how the molecules work to thinking about how you build processes to support those molecules. And so from there, it was similar. My first work experiences were all about how do we make processes work, make them work better. And I think that's been something I've tried to carry forward through the rest of my work experiences. How can I make processes work better? I think the thing that I learned was people were a critical element of that, as well as the equipment and systems were critical elements. So I've tried to really focus on being a great coach so that I'm really well connected with people, because people are still an important part of the equation, as well as having a strong connection to how do the systems work, how are they supposed to work, and how can we make them better so that the two together can ultimately help the business be more productive.
Being in a historical black college, like looking back, what were some of the things you faced?
I think for me, one of the blessings was that I was at home. So compared to many of my peers who might have been away from home, trying to figure out how to deal with some of those things the first time, it was really a blessing for me to be able to be at home. And so it kept some of the challenges at bay. I think that one of the other cool things for me was I had, because of the scholarships, I had a ready-made cohort. And so there were a number of other young black men who were saying, hey, I want to be great. I've got this scholarship too, and we want to all be successful. So we spent time together. We hung out together. And still to this day, those guys are very much friends of mine. And so one actually became the best man at my wedding, and he's now a doctor. Another was still a great friend of mine. And he and I talk all the time because he now works at Amazon. And so I'm trying to help him understand some of the cultural things while he teaches me more about the tech side as I was more on the business side. And so I think those were the things that really helped it where it could have been more of a challenge. I saw other people really struggle because, hey, I'm away from home or away from family, and homesickness or trying to figure. I thought that going in, I thought that I would be okay from a knowing the school, knowing work. It took a while, eventually. And it's like you've got to focus on studying and making sure things happen. And it's easy to want to go to the parties or hang out and do all those other things. So it took a while to figure out those things. But I think those were the challenges for me that I had to work through. Does that help?
And that's a great thing, because home is a foundation of who we become. And so you being, when did you have that first travel out of the first, you're leaving Georgia for the first time and going to the big company, or going, coming from a small town, when was that?
Sure. So the first time having that on my own was really the thing that felt different. The summer after my sophomore year, I got to go to the University of Kentucky. And so I was for 3 months for the summer in Lexington. It was like, oh wow, this is a different experience. I'm meeting now these people from all over the country. I'm meeting these people of different backgrounds, because it was very much that I had been, in many ways, sequestered with people from Georgia or sequestered with people at Albany State, so which meant my community in many cases was largely black. And so here I come to this place and I'm meeting people from all over, and now I really think about it, from all over the world at University of Kentucky. And it was like, oh wow, I'm learning about different people, learning about different backgrounds while starting to study and understand more about chemistry. And so it was an interesting experience starting to have that there. And it's just something that made me want to do that and want to see more of that as I went forward. And so as I think about then, it was the next summer I got the opportunity to go to MIT and spend the summer in Boston. It was another really cool experience and a chance to learn more there. And so just all of those experiences kept pushing me to say, yes, I'm enjoying the opportunity to be away, get connections with more people and find out, learn more. And so that's what really kept me going.
You know, I feel like education is such a key point in this message that I want to deliver to the future and to the people right now. You know, what has education done for you just in this whole path that you know, because you're 20, you're a veteran in corporate, you're a leader, you're a manager. That foundation had to be built there in education. Or how did you create it? Like,
no, you called it right. I think education is a critical element. It's just so funny to think about how far back that goes. There are moments when, you know, I think about even all the way back to kindergarten, and my mother tells this story of, you know, I was going in and I enjoyed school so much, or wanted to go to school so much, that, you know, she was at the door crying and I was gone into school. And so she was there, you know, the parents are often there in that position of they're waiting, you know, oh, you're gonna, no, that, I was like, this is gonna be great. And so it's interesting to think about that as a part of the experience. And from there, it was a consistent thing. I always enjoyed school. I always enjoyed learning. I know that there are others who don't, but I say, you know, whatever it is that helps you find that passion or find that energy to learn about, chase it, follow it, and then it will take you where you need to be. Because that's the thing that's important as it relates to education for me.
That's a key to your success, because I look at your history and I know it's more to it. Entering corporate, entering as a black man, how did that look? What was that like?
Yeah, it's one of those things where I know so much more about it now than I did then. If you had asked me at the time, it was, you know, oh, I have these wonderful grades. I've gone to these great institutions. My truth at this point is that I know that so many people worked so hard to get me those opportunities. Everything, even from my mother making sure that I went to the right places, that I did well in school and pushing me to make sure those things happened, connecting me with friends to make sure that I got introduced to experiences that allowed me those opportunities, like going to schools for the summer and doing other things, and allowed me to make sure that I had right connections, and even once I got to work, that there are people who were before me. So I always have to start now with an understanding that I need to respect those who were before me, because going to Proctor, it was definitely a place where there were people who had been successful and had done the work to make sure that people who looked like me had the opportunity to be respected, and put systems in place to make sure that we would be okay. It is one of those things that I recognized as I walked into Amazon as an opportunity for them and for the business to really get the right type of and volume of people of color as a part of the organization, that we needed more systems, that we needed better systems and support. I think over the last several years, it's something they have been working on, something that I was lucky enough to have the opportunity to be a part of, and something that even now in my new company, as I walked in, I was having a conversation with, you know, the HR director, and she and I looked at each other and we were like, wow, we are one of very, very few black people in this organization. And we're like, well, how does that change? How do we make that something different? And it's like, it's a slow, steady process, and it's something that I know that I'll be able to, years down the road, be proud of, that I've actually developed something for other people to stand on, because I know people did that for me.
Yeah. So you was a part of the Black Employees Network at Amazon, and for a person on the outside looking in, what does that look like?
For a person on the outside, the thing I most want them to know is that I think sometimes those organizations get misconstrued, that people think that those organizations are about something other than the business. And I want to start with, that is the important thing. I was with similar organizations at Proctor. now organizations at Amazon, having discussions about creating something like that at St. Michel. And always those organizations have an element about how do we make sure that the individuals here are successful, and how do we make sure that the business is more successful as a result of our being here. If the organization does both of those things well, the organizations thrive, because then there's desire to bring in more people, because more people who want to make people successful and want to make the business successful, there's no way you can stand against that. If your focus or energy is on just the numbers, we just need to have people of color or black people or diversity, like that can't drive the kind of success that you want, because what will eventually happen is it kind of peters out. But when that group of people is able to look around and say, hey, this business was growing at 2%, now it's growing at 4%, suddenly leaders look around and go, I want more of that. I want more of accelerated growth. I want more people who are helping us be a better organization. And that is where we ultimately move to the right place.
So growing in Procter, like how many years were you there at Procter?
I was there for 18 years, long time.
Almost 20 years.
Yeah.
And so you became a leader there. What are some of the things that you learned and, that's a foundation for what you're doing right now? Because you have about 6 or 7 people working for you right now, right?
Right, yeah. I think one of the things that it's amazing how sometimes you don't know until you experience how people use those things. And so it's one of those things where if you had asked me at the time, I probably would have said, there's all these things that I learned about how to do work. It's interesting that I learned about developing relationships with people. I learned that empathy for another individual's challenges is an important part of developing that relationship so that they can work for you and give you their best. And so I hope that at this point that 6 or 7 folks who work for me know that I care about them as individuals and about their success no matter what. And that's one of the things that I always felt from the other folks that I worked with at Procter, that even now I have several directors who I have connections with on a regular basis who say, hey, how are you doing? How are things going? Is there anything I can do to help? I haven't worked at Procter in over 5 years. I haven't, and we still maintain those relationships. And I hope that for these 7 people who work for me today, that they will have the same with me, that in 5 years, whether they're working at St. Michel or they're doing whatever in their lives, that they'll be able to look and say, I had a great relationship with Robbert. Robbert was an important mentor for me, and he helped me develop and be better as a person, and that whether that has impact for St. Michel as a work and as a business, that they'll be able to say, hey, great people work at St. Michel, and I want to work for people like that, and therefore coming to St. Michel will mean something for anybody that they run into.
And it's true. I mean, it's true because that's what I felt. Like awesome. What you're saying is true about who you are as the connection, and because I felt that you cared about me wanting to do this, and you were saying, you can come to my office at my home and do this, and you was trying to help me in so many ways, and I just want to thank you for that.
Always welcome.
The company now, I feel like you've pivoted from different companies. You did product management, you've been at Amazon, now you off at one of my favorite brands, because I love the wine, company that you work for. I shop with you guys all the time. So that pivot from this corporate, from that corporate, was that a doing of your own, or was you not happy somewhere?
I think it was a little of both.
Okay.
I left Amazon in the fall of 19, and I just needed a break. I talked to my wife when we started in 2016, and I said, it is high risk that you will be a single mother for some period of time. I don't know that I really thought that would be more than 3 years. So it was one of those things. I needed to reconnect with family. I needed to reconnect with kids. I needed to really understand what it was that I wanted going forward. And what I was looking for was an opportunity to do some of the things I get to do now, which is coaching individuals so that they can really develop and deliver for the business. I wanted the opportunity to get back connected more with consumer products, because there were moments at Amazon, honestly, advertising is an interesting and very different business, but it was one that was so far removed from that it felt like I was always a step behind the group. Okay. Whereas in these conversations in wine making, I don't know nearly as much about wine, but I know a lot about distributing products. I know the math of how do we actually make sure that the products are profitable. Those are the kinds of things that are very much connected with me. Having conversations with the marketing organization, all of that was stuff that I was very much used to at Procter and working across with my sales peers. So it was one of those things of, whew, that was what I was excited about as I was having the discussions about what the opportunity might be. And then as I've gotten to work there, it has very much been even more than what I expected in terms of me being able to have impact, have positive effect on the organization, and get to the point where ultimately we as an organization start to move to a better place. So really excited about where St. Michel is going forward. Excited about the wine industry overall, and think that there really is going to be great opportunity for it going forward. I think my own, just as an observer, and I don't get to speak for St. Michel or get to speak for Path, but I recognize that beer, craft did a lot of things to make beer interesting again. I think that premium spirits has done a lot to make spirits interesting again. I look forward to similar questions and opportunities for the wine industry. I think premiumization is already starting to happen. Okay. And I think that there's going to be even more coming in the future that will create excitement so that people will want to have more interest in wine, and ideally, St. Michel will have an opportunity to be a part of it.
So we know who number to call when we having the big party and we want to have the big sponsors for the wine. We know we'll
absolutely. We want to make sure that we are a part of that experience and a part of the conversation to make sure that everyone is enjoying and getting a chance to responsibly spend time with our brands.
So all of what I'm doing is to be a bridge in the country back to Atlanta, because I feel like Atlanta is the black tech mecca of America, and it's birthed so many great people out of it. And you out in Seattle, when you go back home and you look at, where you from, what do you see? Do you see any changes do you see any changes in the growth of the economy there? Do you see, what do you see and what do you think needs to happen?
It's hard. It's one of those things where I had been so focused with work that I felt disconnected. And then COVID has meant that now it's been almost another year, because we've tried to really be very conservative as a family, staying away from things. But from afar, what I see is a lot of energy. I see a lot of people doing things to try to make sure that things get better. And so I'm excited about where that's going and what that means for things and for people going forward. I'm looking forward to, I keep saying to anyone who'll listen, I got an arm right here, please get me a vaccine. It is one of those things I'm looking forward to getting an opportunity to get back there and really see how things are going and see where things are going. As I do watch the news stream though, I can see people of color driving what's happening in Atlanta. I see Georgia Tech saying, hey, we're doing things and we're having not anymore just regional impact, not even just national impact, doing things that have global impact. And so it's really awesome to see what's going on and how that growth, has affected things. It's interesting. You think about, I was there at the time of the '96 Olympics, and people talked a lot about where is Atlanta going, and oh my goodness, this is going to be an amazing city. I think looking back now, we can definitely see that trajectory was upward, and it's really been an amazing upward trajectory that has just continued to push forward. And so I'm excited for what's going to happen next and the opportunities there. And just even from afar to be able to be a part of it is really a cool thing. So, recognizing that I still have so many family and friends who are back there, it does mean to me that they get to be better off as a result, and anything I can do to help is always a space where I want to be.
And it's my traveling has been to take people's stories back and to share this message around the country. Seattle as your new home, tell me a little bit about the embrace and just living in Seattle.
Yeah, I would say the cool thing, the amazing thing has been the embrace and the connection. I honestly say to people all the time, my children are the two little black specks in their entire classrooms. And so on the one hand, we are ambassadors for something many of their peers probably wouldn't get to see otherwise. So I talk to them all the time about being a positive experience for their peers, recognizing at the same time we can't represent all of Black culture as a result of their experience, but at the same time, my hope is that their peers will then have had a positive experience. As I've had more and more people starting to talk to me about, hey, I want to come out. Hey, I want to have the opportunity to work there. I've got a friend who, because of COVID, has joined Amazon and said he's going to be coming up this summer. And I had a friend who joined Microsoft 6 or 8 months ago. Who, families and I worked together a long time ago, and so we get to hang out more than occasionally. I'm continuing to see people of color with experience saying, hey, this is the place to come. This is a place to have an opportunity and develop a community. And so I've got a group of brothers and sisters now who are partners to me and who we get to hang out and do things together. And I look forward to adding to that as we go forward and building things for the city so that we ultimately get to a better place and feel like there's a good sized community in the region. I think that when I moved here in 2016, I looked around and was like, oh man, this could be difficult. But I think it quickly has changed and people are coming and we're getting to the point where there's people who look like me who give me the comfort that I can actually hang out, have a good time, do things. And I think it's also a suburban experience for me. So, being a relatively small town kid, I wanted to be more out of the city. And I think it is also that thing of I've built up a community now of people in the burbs. So we're out there hanging out, having a good time and doing some of the more suburban things, riding bikes, hiking and out there enjoying the sun. Which might be a little different than some of the folks down here in the city.
Thank you for allowing me to be a part of your network, and I look to explore Seattle more. You work for large companies, and my question to leaders who have worked for large companies: do you think we can build large companies like that? If I'm working on building a large company. You think, I see these big companies and I say to myself, I want to build me an Amazon. I want to build a large company. You think we are capable of building large companies like this?
I don't doubt that we are capable. I do think that we have a lot of work to do to get from here to there. Okay. I know that others often talk about the entertainment side or entertainment as the thing that gets people thinking about what's possible. I'm concerned that the thing that really has to happen is that you have to have people willing to shift their mindset. To build $1 billion company is a challenge. To build let's be clear, what Bezos has built required a huge shift from I'm going to be a guy who has the biggest book selling company in the world. Eventually to I'm going to have the biggest online sales company in the world. Wait a minute, that's not what that business is anymore, is it? It is now the biggest online sales company in the world, one of the biggest food retailers in the world. It is one of the biggest advertising organizations in the world, one of the biggest internet service systems in the world with AWS. So think about what it takes as now that leader to be able to handle and manage people who have skills in each of those areas, giving them free rein to go develop systems, programs, capabilities so that ultimately that business is you could think of AWS could be a Fortune 100 company by itself. Mm-hmm. You think about, Whole Foods was a massive organization by itself, but here integrated, adding to it, finding ways to actually add value to this business. I guess what I'm looking forward to is the moment we really, really start thinking big. Really thinking big will be not just thinking about, I want to build a thing, when we realize that it takes having other people who are willing to build in big things and working with them well. That is when I'll see us get to that place. Right now, I think we still too often, and it's not to be mean to us, we too often point back to me. I got to do it all. I got to have. And until we get to the point where we truly want to build community, and when I looked at the folks who were leaders at Amazon who were working with other leaders and peers and the way that they work together to ultimately drive and grow that business, the willingness to share resources, willingness to share ideas. Hey, I saw this. And because someone shared their idea, didn't in any way denigrate your idea. When people's minds come to that place is when I'll believe that we'll get there. So that's what I'm looking forward to. And I think we'll be in a much better place when people start to think that way.
Jewels upon jewels, man. You're a family man. Like you're a. I feel from you. You're what matters to you. Like what's the priority in life for you right now, where you are?
Well, the priority for us is to make sure that our young people grow up and get the opportunity to make even more impact than we did.
Okay.
You know, my wife was a teacher for more than a decade. And so it is the funny thing that I say to people, you know, she sits at home with them, and it is. I hired the best teacher that I know. My mother might debate that. We'll deal with that issue another time. But I tell people all the time, I hired the best teacher I know. And so it means that, you know, in a world of a pandemic, when I do hear so many people saying, I'm struggling to make sure that my kids get educated, I'm struggling, and my kids are struggling. You know, we have had conversations recently with each other and with teachers saying, you know, our children are thriving. I recognize that a piece of that may be related to the kids themselves, but there's a piece of that that is about the structures that we put in place and the willingness to say their education is important to us, and even to take that to the level of being willing to let her be there available for their full school day to make sure that they get what they need. I totally recognize that not everybody is willing and or able to do that. That we were lucky because we were in a position where my boys had something called mom school long before we ever had the pandemic. So that meant that they were used to seeing her and experiencing her as teacher. And I recognize that could have been a new challenge for others. But I think it's critical that we continue to take on the responsibility for the education of our young people so that they can then go out and have impact on the world. And so, you know, my biggest impact in that space is I teach PE every afternoon. So it means that, you know, my boys and I get to have time together. And a few of the neighbors do come over, and, you know, we have a way of allowing all of us to ensure that everybody's getting some of that physical activity. You know, it gets the energy out, make sure that we're all able to kind of settle in. I also try to read with my boys every night. So again, it's another space where they get an opportunity to sometimes read to me, and I get to see their reading skill level. And sometimes I read to them, so they get to hear a great story. But all of that is about showing them you care. And so again, I think the same kind of conversation you're having about me showing you that I care is the same thing that I want them to experience, in hope that showing others you care, I think, is the critical space and the critical sauce that will ultimately put us all in a better place of having people be better off.
Man, this is generational wealth and a different type of foundational building. I think that, you know, a lot of what I have came from my parents. My dad retired from Amtrak here in Seattle, lived here for 30 years. And I just remember coming from Florida, living with my dad as an 18-year-old and getting to go to the Mariners game and the Seahawks game, and he taking me on the ferry, and we looking at Bill Gates' house, and he telling me, you know, you can do, you see this house right here, this guy's built this because he's built the company, and you can think like that. And just having my dad be a hard worker, but also telling me he wanted my generation to be better, even though I didn't listen to any of that early.
That happens.
So I wasn't listening, but all of what he was pouring in came back. That's who I am today. If Awesome. He wasn't telling me that, and my mom wasn't, you know, fighting to get me to think about certain things, I wouldn't be sitting in front of you. And so I feel like that foundation is so important. If you could go back to like your younger self, and you was just leaving Georgia Tech, going to MIT, getting ready to start your career, what would you tell yourself with the knowledge you got now?
One, I would say, slow down, young man, there's time.
Okay.
Is one for sure. I think one of the other things is know that these choices will have impact, but don't be afraid. I think there were plenty of times where it was, man, I don't know, but I'm going. And so okay. I often say I was in that position of I was willing to try and willing to give it my best effort, not knowing kind of what the outcome would be. And so I would definitely say back to myself, know that, you know, things are going to work out, I guess is probably the best way to describe it. And it may not be perfect, but you will do fine. And so You mentioned the connection back to your father. It's one of those things where yesterday was my father's birthday.
Okay.
And so, got to talk to him yesterday, and it's one of those things where I realize that I'm still blessed to have both him and my mother around and can have conversations with them.
Yeah.
But it's like, I also would say to him, spend the time and enjoy that time that you have, because it happens and moves by so quickly, and the same, as I have these moments with my boys, it was like, as I said, it was tough to be in a position where I had to take time away to not be with my family. I really enjoy the fact right now that I work in an office upstairs, they work downstairs, which means that I get to have time with them every day. And so it is also that thing of respect that connection, respect the opportunity to really be with them, because it's valuable. It's valuable.
So in closing, as a business leader, and you've been in the game for a long time, if you're passing the torch, what kind of knowledge would you give me and give the next generation coming up?
My biggest coaching for the next generation is have persistence.
Okay.
Know that you won't be successful at everything, but be willing to stay with it. That you can, if you're willing to work, and it is about taking your talents and recognizing those talents and you taking advantage of them, right? The message that your father gave was the one that kept you going and got you into this space, figuring out a way to use it to take advantage of it. I think it's the same for me. I still have moments where I go, well, the way I learned was I got the opportunity to follow the things and experiences and passions that I had. And so my coaching to the next generation is do the same. Recognize that there's an opportunity for you. Recognize that if you're willing to hang on, willing to stick to it, it will happen. I listen to people all the time. One of the things I really enjoy right now are listening to podcasts of startup leaders. And they're always talking about, how many pitches they had to go through before they got to the point where they even felt like their pitch was tight. And then how many more they had to go through before they got someone to say yes. And then how many more before they got the money that they needed. And so just that kind of persistence, that kind of stick-to-itiveness is what will make any of us successful. It's not my work day and not my experience every day, but there are other experiences that I have. And I don't have a group of people to sit and talk to me about their current challenges and their issues of having to be persistent every day to drive their business. But that's one where I do get to see that and experience it through other people.
Thank you so much. You was a part of making this happen, so and the persistence of me wanting to make this happen, because I got that warm reception from you and Robbert and Atina. Even when I didn't think I could do this, you was a part of me feeling comfortable and just making it happen. My co-producer, Nehemiah, he coached me too to keep going. And I was not thinking I can do this. So your energy is the kind of energy that we need in the world. I just want to thank you. Continue to be who you are as the head of your family and the teacher in the rear of your kids and the legacy builder that you are. And you representing Seattle and Georgia very well. So I'm proud to be a part of your new network, and we're gonna keep going, brother.
Awesome. I really appreciate the opportunity, and I really look forward to continuing to build my network and doing that with you. My name is Robert Hubbard. I'm a senior manager for pricing strategy at St. Michel Wine Estates, and I believe that the opportunity for us is to make the world a better place, but it just takes effort and persistence.
Oh man, thank you for coming out and supporting this vision, man. You made this thing happen for you, man, and I'll be back to see you soon.
Look forward to it. All right.